Amanda Michelle Thacker was a 28-year-old from Onalaska, Texas. She was a mother and very creative. On December 8th, 2015, Amanda's boyfriend claimed she left a note that she was going to a friend's. It did not say whether Amanda would return or not. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. How much does infidelity, two-timing, whatever you want to call it, play a factor in disappearances? The answer, not as much as you might think. Of course, where this is most likely to be a topic is for the man said type of case. Man gets rid of current girlfriend or wife so as to move on to someone else in a way that has as little mess as possible. The interesting part is that the most well-known man-said cases do not involve this scenario, despite relationships being the number one cause of disappearances. Angela Green, Danielle Sleeper, Charlotte Paulus, Rhonda Smith, to name just a few, did not have an infidelity element. However, a few have. Marion Hurley, Rosemary Rapp, but these are the minority. That is, if we are to believe that in all of these, the man is responsible. Well, with Amanda Thacker, it helps that the man in her life was proven to be a killer twice. But of the two females in his life, which one was the other woman? And now a summary of the case. Amanda Thacker was the oldest of five. And from a young age, she was headstrong and liked to argue with all the adults. However, Amanda ended up eventually focusing all that energy on her artistic abilities. She was an excellent sketcher. However, school was another story. Amanda dropped out around 10th grade and suffered from the issues most dropouts do: too much time on their hands and too little to do. When Amanda was 20, she met a guy and they had a son. Eventually, Amanda would have her own apartment and her son with her. However, for the year before she went missing, Amanda and her son lived with Clint, a man introduced to her by her brother. So, on December 8th, 2015, according to this man in Amanda's life, she left to see a friend, leaving a note to that effect. No mention of who that friend was or how long Amanda would be gone. Eventually, after not being able to contact Amanda, her mother requested a welfare check. The police showed up, and Clint gave them the previously mentioned story regarding Amanda. She was never seen again. Clint never produced the note Amanda allegedly wrote. 3 months later, Clint killed a man. And after that, it was proven that he killed a man in Oklahoma years before he ever met Amanda. There's no proof that she knew this. I have to admit that my view on relationships is that it's a miracle that there aren't more disappearances and murders connected to infidelity. Luckily, and this goes for both the cheaters and the people being cheated on, most of them are able to control themselves before it gets deadly. Contemplate what the deciding factor is between those who resort to homicide and the ones who don't, while you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1. Were Amanda's sickness and her disappearance 2 separate issues? Number 2. Why would Clint come up with the idea of the note if he couldn't give it to investigators? And number 3. If Clint killed Amanda, why has she not been found while the other 2 victims were? Amanda's family is very firm in the belief that Clint caused her disappearance. The guest for this episode is Amanda's mother, Angela. Unfound news. There is a pretty good possibility that myself and YouTuber John Lorden will be collaborating on a disappearance this year. Which one? Well, I have picked it out, but it's going to take a bit of time to put it all together. Next, a reminder that for the low price of $2 a month through Patreon or on YouTube, you can get Unfound's episodes early. You get some other stuff as well. Finally, I'll be appearing on Dr. T's show this semester, but that won't be until April 2nd. Mark it on your calendars now. A reminder that you can find my in-depth analysis into the disappearance of Amanda Thacker at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Please sign up and choose to read or listen to the Unfound blog. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Amanda Thacker, Angela. Angela, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thank you for appearing. Everybody needs to know we are doing this interview on January 7th of 2026. This is the first interview being done for the new year. Angela, as we usually do when we have family members on Unfound, let's just talk a little bit about your family. Of course, Amanda is your daughter. Do you have any other kids? Where does Amanda fall in line? Do you have any boys? What can you say about your family?
Yes, Amanda is the oldest of 5 children. Wow. She is my oldest child from my first marriage, and then she had 2 brothers, and then she also has a younger sister that I have from a previous marriage, and then I have one son that's 15 with special needs, and he has Down syndrome, and so he's my youngest son. He's 15 and he's in high school.
Wow!
But
Look
she
at
was
you.
the oldest.
She was the oldest, huh? Okay,
Yes.
and of course he is just 15 now, so there's quite a few years difference between her and your youngest.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
My youngest daughter and him are 18 years apart.
Wow. All right. Thank you for that. Okay, a widespread. Okay. So how do you think growing up, of course, maybe some of the kids weren't born yet, but how did Amanda feel about being the oldest? Was she a great big sister to her younger kids, or what?
Yes, one of the fun things and great things that I remember about her is when her brothers and her little sister were younger than her, so she would get off the school bus and she'd come in the house, and the first thing she'd have to do is pick them up and hug them, because they would sit there whining or crying until she picked him up. She was that big sister that had to give him a hug every day when she came in from school. Wow. And they would wait for her to get there.
And you did say the 2 children right after her are boys.
Yes, and they were all 3 years apart.
All 3 years apart. Okay. All right. So when she was 15, they were 12 and 9. Might have been a little awkward for her, right? Little brothers can sometimes be pains sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, definitely. They all had their moments.
Would you say that Amanda's personality was she unique compared to the rest of them, or are they all kind of unique, or do you see a lot of similarities between Amanda and the rest of the children?
I believe they all have their own uniqueness, but she was a very loving big sister. She always just wanted people to get along, even as she became an adult. And she was always the ringleader. Everybody was always following her, things like that.
When you think about Amanda, does she have more of your qualities or more of her father's qualities?
Amanda was a person all on her own.
Oh, was she?
Because as a child, as a small child, she was always very argumentative. She wanted to argue about everything. And I actually have a recording of her when she was about 3 years old, arguing with one of her uncles. and she would just, she was very matter of fact about everything. She was just like, she was like a teenager in a 3-year-old body. But,
so what were they arguing about? Arguing about her favorite toy, or what could a 3-year-old argue about?
Well, I was pregnant with her brother.
Oh.
And she was arguing with her uncle, telling him, well, my mom's going to have a baby girl. She has a baby girl in her belly, things like that. Different things. He would do things to instigate with her to get her going on something, and then we would just sit there and laugh about the stuff that she would come up with.
Gotcha. Well, so I guess she ended up being wrong, right? She thought you were going to have a girl, you ended up having a boy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good thing she didn't put any of her little little girl dollars on that. She would have lost that bet.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right, so, and maybe you should talk about this. Where did all of your children get raised, including Amanda, maybe in particular Amanda?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we lived in Texas, and I lived in Texas from the age of 12 to 43. And so she grew up in a place called Dayton, Texas, which was about an hour and a half from where she went missing. So she went to Dayton High School. Her brothers attended Dayton High School, but she later got her GED. But they grew up in that area all their life, so they knew everyone in town, and were the kind of kids that didn't meet a stranger, things like that. Yeah. Dayton was a small town. It was about 30 minutes from Houston.
Okay, so Houston, one of the biggest cities in the United States, and it's only 30 minutes away.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, so a small town, but right there on the edge of the big town.
Right.
Okay. All right, and let's just not concentrate on Amanda exclusively. You talked a little bit about her personality, but when she got into her teenage years, hobbies, interests, what are those types of things was she into?
Well, she loved drawing, painting. She listened to alternative rock, and just doing things with her friends or her family. The kids spent a lot of time, outside playing together, just she loved to draw, so that was one of her favorite things. And then she liked singing. She loved to play pool. She had older cousins that when they were kids, they'd go over and they had a pool table, so they were always all of them were always playing pool together.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And what about school? Any particular top subjects that she accelerated in? Or, she excelled in, I should say?
Well, she later, she got her GED a couple years. Okay. She didn't finish high school, but she went back and got her GED through a program called Liberty something or other.
Good for
there
her.
In Dayton. And so, yeah. She had a hard time keeping up with things. Like, she would forget her homework all the time, stuff like that. So she later went back and got her GED. So I was very proud of her for doing that.
Okay. So when it came to school, she was more involved in the social aspect than the educational
Yes.
one? Okay.
Yeah, she's always a little social butterfly.
Okay. How far did she get in high school before she said, well, that's enough of that?
Probably the 9th grade. Oh, but she was in her 20s, early 20s when she got her GED.
I'm guessing when when she decided she didn't want to do any high school, that had to be concerning to you, right? Did you have a say in that or what?
I didn't really, because at that time she was living with her dad. She had moved in with her dad, and he was kind of, in control of that part of her life. I would have rather that she stayed in school and, that kind of thing.
Yeah, of course. What did she end up doing? Of course, sometimes I guess when we think of people dropping out, maybe they're a little older. Maybe it's like before their senior year or something. To not get into 10th grade, my perception, younger than the average. What did she do then with her time and everything? Maybe being 15, 16 years old.
Well, and she might have been older than that. I'm just trying to think back. She might have attended her sophomore year, but she homeschooled, tried to homeschool for a while, but as I said, she was very forgetful. She would lose things. They bought I guess all her curriculum that she needed to do the homeschooling, and she would lose stuff. So she just later went back and went through this like a college course type thing or a graduation type thing to earn her GED.
Okay. Of course, another thing that pops up when we hear about kids, dropping out of school, leaving school, is concerned about their social lives, and that can be, of course, very risky. How did Amanda handle that?
Well, she was living with her dad, and so I really didn't have any control over any of that part of the situation. Right. At that time, I mean, all I could do was give my opinion, and it wasn't always appreciated. So, Yeah. Hence the reason why we were exes. But
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so she would spend a lot of time with her friends that lived down the street from her dad and things like that.
Okay.
They were always going and doing stuff, like he was into bowling and things like that, and so when the kids would go see him on their weekend and stuff like that, they would go bowling or go do different things, go see family, stuff like that.
I guess what I'm saying is I think a lot of times, and certainly we've covered missing people who did not finish high school. It's, it comes up. We start worrying about, is the kid going to get involved in crime? Is the more likely boys, more likely boys, of course, but crime into drugs and things like that.
Right. Well, she had also met her son's father, who lived down the street. During that time, and I was going to say, she got in trouble when she was in school, for hanging out with the wrong people. She did have to go to alternative school for a year. That's when she was living with me before she moved in with her dad. And so just for doing, just doing the wrong things. And we kind of went through a lot with her. She was in the hospital for a while. They were going to put her on medication, different things like that. But the minute she moved in with her dad, like, all that stuff kind of stopped. So, and I didn't have any control over what was going on over there. So she did have a troubled teenage years.
Okay. And where were you living? How close were you living? Maybe she was living with her father. Did you have one of your sons or both your sons?
We lived in the same town, so he was like 5 miles the other way in town. We all lived in Dayton. Okay. And the 2 older boys were with me, and then I was in my second marriage at that time, and my husband that my youngest daughter is with, we wound up raising 6 kids because he had 2 kids, I had 3, then I had my youngest daughter, and then I raised my niece also.
Wow, the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, so it was a blended family.
Okay, gotcha. All right. And all right, so she's only 5 miles away, but she dropped out of school, and she's doing things on her own time. You said she had some troubles here and there. So maybe we'll move on to this. Of course, she was a mother. You did say that she met this young man around the same time. I guess they had at least one child together. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so she met her son's father, and he lived like down the street from them. So they actually had rode the school bus together, and that's how they met. Wow. Whenever she was in school. And she had one son, so at the time that she went missing, he was 8 years old. Okay.
Well, how old was she? She was 20 when she had her first son then, because she was 28 when she went missing? Had her first
Yes.
child? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so what did you, I mean, you said she had some troubling years there. Would you say by the time she was 20 years old, she'd kind of straightened things out, or was there still some issues going on? What would you say?
Not really, because at that, she was still living at her dad's house. There was a lot of dysfunction going on at the dad's house. And then later my two sons moved in with them too, just because of their behavior and things like that. And so, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought.
That's all right.
So it was a weird situation because she had met her baby's dad. His name was Danny. And then Danny's mother met her dad, so they dated. So later on, that's important because, they all lived in the same house. Well, her dad did not, when she quit school and things like that, I felt like he didn't do what he could have to help her, better herself, get her driver's license and things like that. So by the time that she moved out of his house, she was 28 years old and didn't have her driver's license. She knew how to drive, but, things like that didn't happen that would have helped her. So when she finally moved out of his house and got out onto her own, she would walk to work a mile every day. She moved into town and she worked at a gas station, and they moved into an apartment, her and her son, because her son's father and her split up. And so she moved out on her own with her son. And then my oldest boys lived with her too, off and on, while she lived in the apartment. But she struggled because she would, she had to walk to work every day. She didn't have her own vehicle. And at one point, she had given her dad $800 for a car that he had, and he wound up giving the car to someone else and never giving her money back. So things like that happened that were dysfunctional, that created issues along the way.
Yeah, of course.
And at that time, I was living in Arkansas, so I was 8 hours away. But I would tell her, well, because she worked at this gas station, and she would work and get off work at 11 o'clock at night and walk home. So I'd tell her, well, when you get off work, call me, and I'll talk to you till you get home, and you get in your door and you lock your door,
Yes.
And so we would do that every night that she worked. She would call. So I literally talked to her, once or twice a day, because she would call me as she was walking home from work and tell me about how her day went and things like that.
Yeah. And of course, she's walking alone home late at night. She's talking to you. You can make sure maybe nothing happens, or if something does happen, you're on the phone and you can call the police or something, even though you're in Arkansas.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was our routine. We did that every night. And we would go, I've always worked retail all my life, so I would take a vacation in January, and we would go down and visit them. And every year I'd go down and visit with them, and I would bring her a whole carload of stuff like clothes and things like that. So one year one of the times she told me that she was walking home, and there was, of course, a torrential downpour, and a police officer stopped and actually gave her a ride home because she was just drenched. He helped her. And anyway, so when I went down, I took her a warm coat and a nice scarf and hat and gloves and stuff that she could keep warm in, and because I knew she was having to walk back and forth to work.
Yeah. So you were in Texas, but then you moved to Arkansas. That couldn't have been easy, given that she was still living there in Texas, right?
Yeah, at the time that I moved, she was still living with her dad. So, we just, there just wasn't a lot in the relationship at that time. But being able to, we had made our amends with each other, because being able to talk to her like that every day, and I would just laugh about the stuff that she was telling me, and I felt like she was my best friend.
Yeah.
So So it was really hard because, we'd gotten past the things in her youth and things like that. And, I would talk to her every day and we'd just laugh and cut up, and she would tell me about her son, and I would just crack up because her son was very smart and he had the same attitude that she did when she was little.
You're arguing with adults at 3 years old, just like his mother did.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so, and one story in particular was really funny. We were sitting there one day, and because I'd always told her, you're going to get paid back for acting the way you act, because that's one of those things we pass down to our kids. You're going to have a kid that's just like you.
Yes.
Well, I was laughing at her one day because, she apologized to me, and she said, Mom, we were bad kids, weren't we? And I said, no, you weren't bad kids. You just guys got into stuff, But I laughed at her because she had laid out a set of clothes for her son for school, and he come in there and he says, I'm not wearing that. You dress yourself better than you dress me. I'm not going to school looking like a hobo. And I just looked at her. I just listened to her and I laughed, and it was just hilarious because she had laid out a brand new set of clothes that he hadn't even worn yet. And so I just thought it was hilarious, and thought, well, you're getting paid back,
Oh my goodness. All right. And how many kids does she have? Just the one son?
Just one son.
Okay. All right. So she's into her 20s. She's with the father, the son, but they have problems, and she ends up getting her own place. And
right.
How long does she work at this gas station? And was she working there at the time of her disappearance?
No, she wasn't, because she had moved to Onalaska, which was like an hour and a half away from where she was living in Dayton.
Okay.
So she worked at the gas station for, I would probably say, 6 months or so.
Okay.
I honestly can't remember the timeline on that.
Okay.
But she was there for quite a while. And then when she moved to Onalaska, she was while she was also in Dayton, she did some home health care work. So she could go and help older people. She got into doing that kind of thing. And then part-time she worked at an old folks home that was there.
Okay.
A nursing home.
All right, so this is what's going on in her 20s, and she was 28 when she went missing. So let's now move on to this. Of course, a big part of our conversation eventually is going to be about this guy, Clint. How did Clint and Amanda meet? How did that happen?
So she met Clint through her brother. Her brother lived in Cleveland, which was about 30 miles away from where she was living in her apartment. And he and Clint met because they used to play pool together. He worked at a restaurant there and lived with his boss, and in the evenings he'd get off work and he'd go play pool at the closest bar to where he worked. And so that's how he and Clint met, and then he introduced Amanda to Clint.
Okay. Of course, you were not there for this meeting, but I guess at least one of your sons was, and they
Yes.
Amanda and Clint kind of just hit it off from right away, or did it take a little while?
And he Clint was a tattoo artist, so Josh had gotten several tattoos from him. Amanda was interested in that kind of thing because, tattoos, piercings, all that good stuff. And so they just kind of hit it off. He didn't like her situation, knowing that she was walking to work late at night, or walking home from work late at night. So mutually, when they got together, I think they both cared about each other's situation and wanted to do something to be helpful to each other, And Amanda was kind of looking for a way out of the situation she was in because one of her brothers was living with her, and her ex had moved into the same apartment complex, and that was a whole other story, but she was wanting to get out of that situation.
Okay, and then she gets along with Clint and sees, well, maybe I can move in with this guy. And that's what she did. She moved to Onalaska.
Yes, and
Right.
she, was excited about the fact that he was a veteran, and she really looked up to him for that, and they seemed to hit it off well in the beginning.
Okay. All right, so, and maybe we'll move to that. So what was the living situation? Who was eventually living all under this one roof? It was Clint. It was Amanda. Who else?
So her son Casey was living with her, and then also he had a little girl. So Casey was 8, and the little girl's name was Eva, and she was 4.
Okay, so we got 2 adults, 2 kids under the same roof.
Right.
Yeah, and in your opinion, once, of course, you're talking to her a month into this, 2 months into this, how did you think it was going? What was she telling you? How was it going?
Well, the first month, it was like honeymoon bliss, and he's so great, and he's this, he's that, but it changed very quickly. Just because she would talk about some of the things that they didn't see eye to eye on, or she would, he's an asshole. All guys are assholes. She would go through that men hating stage, but she had previously, before she met him, she had been in a bad relationship where the man was abusive and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, I could just tell that about after that 1 month, 2 month period, things didn't seem to be as good as they were. You weren't hearing her say, "Oh, he's so fantastic," and he's this and that.
All right.
It was, went down pretty quick.
All right, so that was the living situation, and within a few months, and we're going to cover a few other things first, but we should understand they were living together for about a year before she went missing. About a year.
Yes.
Okay, about a year. All right, but already a couple months into this, and this wasn't just a roommate situation. They were a couple, like romantic wise.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Correct, and he was still working as a bouncer in a bar, so he was working nights, and she would work during the daytime. And in between, she took care of the little girl, things like that, and her son was in school, so so she was working part-time too. So they weren't spending a lot of time together because he was working all night. He wouldn't get home till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then she would go and do her job while the kids were at school.
Okay. During this time, did you ever go down there and meet Clint in person?
I had gone down. My second son was getting married, and we went down and we stayed with them, but I never actually got to meet him. There were 2 opportunities where I would have been able to meet him, but something was always going on and he couldn't be there. And then when we went down for the wedding, he was working that night, so we never saw him. We were up and gone the next day before he was gone, but he wasn't happy about us being there, but we didn't, we stayed at her house and then went down to my son's wedding the next day. And so he wasn't real keen on the fact that we were going to be there in his house. You know what I mean?
I see. Okay. All right. So this living situation, and you never did actually get to meet him one-on-one.
No, we did not.
Okay. Being that it was her brother, your son, that introduced the 2, was he over there often? Did he go over there?
No, because
please.
No, he was actually living back in Dayton at that time, and she kind of moved, and he was living with her brother, but she moved to kind of get out of that situation. So he lived in Dayton, which was an hour and a half away, so they never saw each other, and they didn't want him around, basically.
Okay, so I guess we could say is Clint and this brother who introduced them, they weren't exactly like close friends.
No, they had only known each other for a few months, I think.
Okay. Let's move on to this. Being that we already spoke about a car and this $800 and the $800 vanished and she never got a car, but you had told me that she had bought a car though eventually, and that it went in
Yes.
Clint's name, and maybe this is also indicative of how their relationship was going. Why don't you tell the listeners about that?
Yes. So she had gotten income tax money, and they went to an auction. And Clint drove around a little blue sports car. I don't know what kind of car it was, but they got a car for her. So they went to this auction and they actually bought two cars. They bought a minivan and they bought a 2008 Chevy Malibu for Amanda to drive back and forth to work. And she didn't have a license, so she used her money to pay for the car, but they put it in his name because she didn't have a driver's license.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the laws are around that when you buy a car, so I don't think she knew at that time either. I think she probably could have put it in her name and just didn't know that, you know?
Okay.
And so they had a minivan, and they actually had three cars. At the time that she disappeared, he had sold that car to the neighbor down the street.
Mm-hmm.
And so
but the car got bought and was put in his name, right?
Right. So it was the title was in his name. So, you know, she wanted to get the car put in her name so that it would be hers.
Right, of course. All right, so, you know, a little bit of a problem there, right? A little bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I have to ask, why didn't she ever get her driver's license? That's not that complicated to do. She just never made the time? Or
Well, she knew how to drive. She had practiced driving. It was a matter of passing a test, you know, having someone take her to go do that, and those kinds of things. So it's just like time-wise, it didn't happen as quickly for her as she wanted it to.
okay.
But she still drove herself back and forth to work. And then while she lived in Onalaska, she was doing home health care work, and then also worked part-time at a grocery store there.
Okay.
And so she would have to drive herself to work, and she would be worried because she'd pull into the parking lot at the grocery store, and the police would come and park next to her. So she was always afraid she was going to get pulled over and not have a driver's license, you know.
I mean, obviously, my impression being that she was driving, and of course, we are not condoning this for everybody out there. You know, go get your driver's license and insurance and everything. But it seems to me she could have passed a driver's license got her driver's license very easily, but she just didn't.
Right.
Okay.
It would just be something that would get put on the back burner. She would tell me I'm studying for it, or I got to go take, practice tests or something like that on the computer. But something happened and she would never just go take the test,
Right. And I guess maybe this is another indication of the relationship that, of course, I'm in my 50s now, but so it'd be, if I was dating some woman who was driving around in a car, but she didn't have her license, I'd be like, honey, maybe we should make some time to go do this, maybe.
Yeah.
And being that Clint, I guess, didn't help her, or I'm not saying force her, but, urge her to get a license, maybe is kind of indicative of their relationship too.
Right, because it made her a little bit more dependent on him.
Yeah, I think you could be right about that. Okay, so that's the car situation. So we, she's already complaining about him, a few months into this relationship. But of course, like you said, they're together for a year before she goes missing. So let's move up here but I should ask you this, during that time, did you, she had complaints, but did you think that there was any, domestic violence going on, any abuse? Could you get a feel for that, even though you weren't there?
I didn't, because she had been in a previous relationship right before that where things were abusive. she wasn't telling me that anything like that was going on, but I think she would have been embarrassed to tell me about it because we were so upset about what she went through with the previous guy. Like, we were ready to go down there and kick his butt ourselves,
Yeah.
And so I feel like if anything like that was going on, she wasn't telling me,
Okay.
But there were strange things. Like, he never wanted to be put on social media. He didn't want her taking his picture and putting it on social media. He was an avid hunter, and so they never went and bought like store-bought meat. But one of the things I wrote down in my notes was that one thing that she loved about him was like he would buy things in bulk, like toilet paper and paper towel and paper plates,
Yeah.
And she just thought that was the greatest thing. So it was almost like he could live off the grid very easily.
Some people are like that.
Yeah.
Some people are like that. But as far as abuse goes, you never heard about anything. But anybody who was around Amanda at the time that you trust, did they ever say, well, I saw her with bruises. I know that she went to the hospital and didn't tell you about it. You know the signs that we're always looking for when it comes to domestic abuse. Anything like that?
No, there was never anything like that. And then she also did have a miscarriage while she was with him too. Yeah. But, nothing was ever said about that.
Okay.
She would talk of that one particular argument they had. He had a favorite shirt that he would wear every day, and he would put it on when he got home from work. And she'd washed it and left it sitting in the washer too long, and so it had a bad smell to it. And he would come home every day and put that same shirt on, and she said, Mom, it's driving me crazy because it smells so bad. He won't let me wash it. I keep telling him, let me have that shirt so I can wash it, and he won't let me do it. So she had to hide the shirt from him to wash it because she couldn't stand to sit next to him because it smelled so bad. And, because we're just kind of laughing about it a little bit. Well, they got into an argument about it because she had hid the shirt, and they got an argument about it. She took off walking to work. Well, he got in the car and followed her, made her get in the car with him, and basically just told her, if you don't produce that shirt every 30 minutes while you're at work, something of yours is going to go missing. And so she had hid it behind the washing machine so she could wash it, And I just thought, that's weird. Why would you want to sit around in something that smells stinky,
Okay.
But
yeah, all right. That's a story. That might be the first smelly shirt story that we've had on this podcast in 9 years. But it's a little funny, but I think it's as good as anything an indication of what was going on under that roof.
Right, and and he was very OCD. He had all kinds of movies and things, but they were in alphabetical order, and she messed up his alphabetical order. Well, she would hear about that, but she just never said anything about anything going on. I didn't suspect anything like that.
Okay. Let's move up to Thanksgiving. She actually went to see you for Thanksgiving. Did she bring her son along?
Well, so while she was with Clint, she moved to Wyoming for 3 months. She was supposed to go for 6 months and stay with a friend that she knew from church. He was going to teach her how to run a kiosk in a mall to help her learn how to run her own business. And so she went and stayed with this friend in Wyoming, and she was gone for a couple of months, 3 months, and then her son stayed with his dad while she went to Wyoming to go do this. Well, she wound up coming back early. She was supposed to stay half a year, and she came back at Thanksgiving.
I see.
And and
Clint allowed her to go. I mean, once again, quote unquote, allowed her to go for that time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and so she wound up coming back early around Thanksgiving, and he was supposed to be going on a hunting trip with his dad and uncle. And every year at Thanksgiving, that's what they did. They got together and they went hunting. And she had not seen her son in 3 months, and, had talked to me about it. And I said, well, you need to go spend time with your son. He's probably really missed you and all that kind of stuff. So she wound up going to her dad's for Thanksgiving, and Clint was not happy about it at all because her ex also lived there with her son. But she wound up going and spending Thanksgiving with them, and she spent her money that while she was in Wyoming, we would talk all the time, and she was not happy with the situation with Clint, and she was wanting to leave. When she got back, she wanted to get her car put in her name and then just leave. She wanted to move out. She wasn't happy with that situation anymore. And she stayed because of the car.
Okay. All right, but you did see her at Thanksgiving. So she goes to Wyoming. Instead of going directly back to Texas, she went and saw you.
No, I didn't see her at Thanksgiving. I was living in Arkansas. This was when she went back to Texas.
Yeah.
That's where she was at that time.
Okay.
I never saw her.
Okay. I'm sorry. I got that wrong. So you didn't. When was the last time you saw her before she went missing?
I had seen her in January of that year, because every January we would go down and visit. And so that was the last time I had seen her. And she cried. We gave her a ride to work every day, and, took care of them, brought them down. I brought her down a bunch of stuff for her house, her apartment, and things like that. And so it was really hard because, she just cried, and she hugged my neck. She didn't want me to leave, Yeah. So that was hard.
All right. So you didn't see her for almost a year before she went missing?
Correct.
That whole year. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How far did you live away from each other? Of course, it's different states, but...
Yeah. So it was basically an 8-hour trip. We lived in Conway, Arkansas, which is about 30 minutes from Little Rock.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, and my guess is maybe we're planning to see her in January then of maybe 2016 if she doesn't go missing. That was the plan.
Well, no, I had talked to her and told her that we weren't going to get to come down because at that time we were planning to move to Indiana, which is where I am now. So I was not going to get to see her then.
Okay. So it was a little up in the air as to when you were going to be seeing her next. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. All right. She goes to Wyoming, goes back to Texas.
Yes.
And the next thing we need to talk about is she's sick. Not long after she gets back to Texas, she's sick, and of course you talked to her. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the weekend, so she had spent the whole Thanksgiving weekend with Casey, or Thanksgiving week with Casey, her son, and went back home. And then I had mailed her and Casey presents for Christmas, and I was tracking the presents. I had sent presents to her and presents to my dad, so I was trying to make sure everybody got everything. And I had sent her a acrylic art set and a white T-shirt. My husband and I, the previous year, had gone to Connecticut, and we went to Foxwoods Casino. That was the first time I'd ever gone to a casino. Mm-hmm. And we went to the Hard Rock Cafe, and I bought a T-shirt in there, and it had angel wings on it, and it was white, and it had blue writing on it. And so I had sent her an acrylic art set and that T-shirt for Christmas, and I had bought Casey one of those little helicopters that was like a drone for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And so I was, patiently waiting for her to get those presents, and that was around. I want to say around about the last time I'd actually texted back and forth with her was on December 8th of 2015, and I had texted her to let her know that I mailed her Christmas presents off, and I was waiting for her to get them because I was excited because I knew she loved to draw and paint. She was going to be excited about the art set, and it was one of those things that I was excited for her to guess what she got, or figure out what she got for Christmas. And so I never did hear anything after that. She had texted me, I believe, on the 8th, and we were texting back and forth, and she was just saying that she was really sick, that she didn't know which end was worse, and then the last time that she was on social media was December 10th.
Okay, and as best as you can tell, when you texted with her on the 8th, she was sick. How long had she been sick at that point?
I would say a couple of days or so, because she didn't really say like how long she'd been sick, but she thought she was coming down with some kind of virus. She just hadn't gone to the doctor or anything like that.
Is there any proof she ever did go, to a quick care or anything because of this, or not?
No, nothing that I know of.
Okay, she wasn't able to get you. Or she believed it was some sort of virus, maybe it wasn't food poisoning or something?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure. She just didn't go into elaborate about it, but also that weekend she had Casey with her, and later on after the fact, he had said something about Clint tried to give him a sandwich to eat, and he didn't want to eat it because it was nasty looking, and so he snuck and threw it away. But he was there, and he knew that she was sick because he had told me that she was in bed that whole weekend that he was there.
Her son told you this later?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Okay, and what about this December 10th? What this social media, is this like on Facebook or Instagram or something, or what?
Yeah,
what exactly was the post? What was it?
Oh gosh, I couldn't tell you what the post was. She was always posting like funny memes and different things like that. But I just know that was the last time that anything was seen on social media for her.
Okay. So let me just ask you, of course, now. So there you have it. Let's and of course she goes missing. Maybe it's December 10th, but it might be December 8th, and we'll get into that in a bit. Just some questions regarding Amanda for that year of 2015. Your overall view of the relationship during 2015. The idea that I get is that maybe she was looking for a way out. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, I totally feel like she was wanting a way out of the situation she was in when she was living in her apartment complex, with her and Casey. She was looking for a way out that was going to be easier, and I don't know that. And the thing is we had the discussion, and I said to her, "Hey, Amanda, you've got to be careful who you move in with. You've got a son. You don't know what kind of person you're gonna, this person could be."
Of course.
And of course she was like, "Oh, Mom, it's gonna be all right. Everything is gonna be." We had that whole conversation, and because I was apprehensive about it because she didn't know him very long or anything like that. And I'm not as trusting as my daughter was,
Right. Right. Okay. What about maybe just some of her friends? Did she have any female friends that she would see once in a while? That she would talk to? What are they saying?
Well,
what were they saying during the course of that year?
Yeah. So, I mean, she had people that she worked with when she was working at the grocery store. She was like, I would laugh at her because she would say was the oldest person there because it was a lot of teenagers and stuff like that working at the grocery store. So during the year that she lived with Clint, as she was doing her home health care work, like she didn't really have any friends there that she would go hang out with. When she lived in Dayton, she had girlfriends and things like that, but they were like an hour and a half away. But she would do, she was doing the home health care work, and she had two older ladies that she worked with. She would go help them fix meals or clean their house or take them to get a prescription or something like that, or go pick up prescriptions for them. But there was a couple of times that she had gone over and she would have dinner with them. They really weren't supposed to do that, but like she would go over and help cook dinner, and just they would sit and watch a movie or talk or have dinner together or something like that. So that was kind of the only friends that she had there while she was in Onalaska. She didn't have any girlfriends that lived close by or anything like that.
Okay. So no real observers there. Somebody that was seeing her that we could trust to give kind
Correct.
of, instead of just going by what she was telling you over the phone or texting or whatever, nobody really on the ground there that saw her once in a while.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Let's move up to this disappearance date. Maybe it's December 8th. Maybe it's December 10th. I realize that you made a post, but as so many times we've talked about on Unfound, that sometimes you don't know whether to believe the missing person did it or not when we have these final posts. But what is Clint's story, and when did you finally hear this story? What was...
Okay.
Let's get into that now, if you could.
Yeah, so as you know, I was tracking her packages, so I knew that she got her packages. She got them on the 10th. Okay. And because I had texted her and said, hey, you should get your packages in 2 days, and I still have the text messages on my phone. And so I was waiting patiently for her to get those because I was excited about, what she was going to say, and I just never heard anything back. So, like on the 13th, I texted and said, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you for 3 days. Did you get your packages, And there was just nothing. So I also had Clint's number, so I called him and I said, hey, where's Amanda? I've been trying to get a hold of her for 3 days. We've sent packages and want to know what's going on. And at that point, he said that her phone was broken, that she left a note. He had been at his dad's house, and he was just coming back, and she had left a note that she was going to stay with a friend, and that her phone was broken, and that she would see him when she could. Well,
even though she was sick. Produced. Even though she was sick.
Correct.
Okay.
It just didn't sound... His story didn't mesh with what she was saying.
I can understand why, but that's what he said, and she left a note, and he gave you the impression that she would be coming back sometime.
Well, he said she took the presents with her.
She did. That's what he said. She took the presents with her. Okay. So so what are you thinking? I'm guessing at the time you believed that. Did you have an idea? Did she say what friend it was or anything? Did he say that?
No, I was having a hard time with that. I was like, it didn't make sense because she would have found some way to get a hold of us. She would have used someone else's phone. Like, she was resourceful enough that she wouldn't have just gone as long as she did without talking to someone, especially her son, because she talked to him every day and she talked to me every day. So I was becoming suspicious right away. And I was like, okay, so, a few days later, I texted him back and said, hey, have you heard from Amanda? I still haven't heard from her, and there was no response.
He didn't get back. He didn't respond to you.
No.
Okay. And I just want to make sure we understand something very clearly. the day that he told you she left and took the presents, what date was that?
The day that he told me she left and took
Yeah,
the presents?
yes. What day did she tell you that?
I don't know there. Let's see. December 7th, she was sick.
All right.
And then
December 8th is the last time you spoke to her.
Yeah.
And then there was this entry on December 10th using her maybe Facebook account. And then where within all of that did eventually, when was it that he told you, one-on-one that, yeah, she went to a friend's and took the presents?
So I think, so it says I texted her again on the 13th, and I still didn't hear anything back from her. Hold on, let me think here. All right, he said she'd left a note saying she was going to a friend's house. I'm going to say that it had to be somewhere right after the 15th or the 13th, somewhere in that area.
Okay, so 3 days after this Facebook post. 3 days.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's his story, and you, of course, you're still trying to contact her, and then when you try to get back to him again, he's not getting back to you at all. Nothing.
Right.
All right. And so what did you do next?
So I did send him, I did call him, and I left a message, and I told him I was going to call the police, and that, I wanted to know where she was at, that this wasn't making sense, and I left a message saying that I was calling the police, and so that's what I did. The day that I got a hold of the police, which was 9 days later.
So December 19th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so I talked to an officer named Sergeant Vasquez, who's since passed away, that was on her case. I dealt with him for a long time, but he went out there and did a wellness check, and, I had to explain to him that no, she wasn't crazy, no, she wasn't doing drugs, and that it was unlike her to not call me every day or call her son every day, because during this time I had also reached out to her father, and I said, hey, have you heard from Amanda? It's been days and nobody's heard anything, and his response to me was, well, I don't know what to tell you, and I'm like thinking to myself, well, get in your car and go see, you're there, go drive up there and see if she's okay. And he never did do that. So they went out. So the officer Vasquez went out to go do the wellness check. And when he drove up, he said there was a moving trailer out there. And he's like, he called me back and he's like, well, how long have they lived in this trailer? And I said, well, they've lived there a couple of months. And he said that there was a woman moving in. And I'm like, what?
Moving
what
in?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. And so, so I was like, well, my daughter never would have stood for that. Something's not right. She would have never sat there having another woman move in, Anyway, come to find out, it was Clint's little girl's mother that was moving in. And they questioned him, and he, of course, told them that she'd left a note, but he couldn't produce the note. And so that's what, the officer told me when he came back, that, there was no note, but that woman's moving into the trailer. And he had asked me, how long they had lived there. And I said, well, only a couple of months, because while Amanda was in Wyoming, he had moved their stuff into this trailer. He had moved to a different trailer, but in the same subdivision that they lived in, which was in Canyon Lake.
Okay.
in Onalaska.
All right, so when the cop calls you back, he says, I have bad news and I have worser news. The bad
Yeah.
news is that your daughter's not there, and the worser news is some other woman is moving in with this guy.
Right. And that's when I, just said to him, well, something is not right, that she would have never stood for that,
Okay.
for him to have another woman living there or whatever.
Okay.
And then, and then the main thing was just trying to convince them that, she wasn't crazy. She wouldn't have just took off on her own like that for days and not spoken to her son or myself.
And that is something that we need to be clear on. Where during this time of the December 8th, 9th, 10th, I realize you weren't there. But where was her son during those dates of December 8th, 9th, and 10th?
He was with his dad.
All right, so he wasn't there. Conveniently, the son, who was 8 years old, wasn't there.
Correct. He had spent the weekend with her, the weekend of the 8th, but then he had gone back home with his dad.
Okay. All right, so the police officer gets back to you, says, here's what's going on. There's this trailer, there's this other woman, etc. Yeah. Is that, at that point, do you file a missing persons report? When does that happen?
Yes, and then he makes her bolo poster and all that kind of stuff. And like it was all, there's just a lot of crap in between here and there. But yes, he made a missing persons photo for her, which was one of the last pictures she posted of herself on Facebook, was her missing persons photo.
Okay.
And then during that time I was contacted, whenever that was made, I was also contacted via Facebook from a lady named Cassie Marco, who is the founder of Missing Hearts, and she's a person that helps make posters and things like that for people that are missing there in Texas at the time.
Okay.
And so she started helping me make posters. We organized a search, a neighborhood search, to have her family go door to door and knock and see if anyone had seen Amanda or heard anything or things like that. So we were able to go down there for that. And she would just go up to each door and say, hey, we're looking for this missing girl. Have you seen her? Do you remember her? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Did you ever try to, once you found out about the situation that was happening there around December 19th, did you ever try contacting Clint again to say, hey, what the heck's going on here?
After I told him I was contacting the police, I didn't contact him again. I didn't. The girl that moved in with him, he had posted a picture, because I had him on Facebook, of them at the bar, and it looked to me like she was wearing a shirt that belonged to my daughter, because when we went down for the wedding, she was going to wear this sheer, it was like a velvet shirt, but then it had like a sheer over top, and she was going to wear that to the wedding, but it was so hot that she had decided to wear one of the shirts that I brought down for her, because every time I'd go see her, I'd bring her clothes and stuff like that. And but I was just like, what? And so, every time I would see something like that he had posted on Facebook or whatever, I would, turn that into the police.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we have this going on. You have this missing persons report. How forcefully did the police try to talk to Clint about this?
Yes, so they did talk to him several times, and at one point, because I had asked him, I'd asked him about her belongings and things like that, because he was saying she left and took her things with her, and her things were still there 3 months after she went missing, and they finally got into the trailer. Her belongings was still there. She had an antique table that her grandmother had given her. At one point when we had gone down to go do that search, the police had gone in there, and he had a garage full of stuff, boxes and things that belonged to her and Casey, and he, let them take it, and so they put her stuff in storage for me. And so I was able to go down and look in the storage and realize that half of her stuff wasn't there. I found more things that belonged to Casey than what were my daughter's, like none of her personal belongings, but the things that supposedly she left behind were like family photos and baby pictures, her baby book that I had made for her, and things like that somebody wouldn't just leave. That was a sentimental type of person. So when they finally were able to go in and search the premises, they were saying they couldn't get a search warrant because her name wasn't on the lease. They couldn't search it. But later on, we found out that if her dad and I would have signed an affidavit stating that we knew she lived there, they could have gone in quicker. But so he had 3 months to get rid of all of her belongings before they actually got in there and started getting her stuff.
Okay.
Would you say that during this time, would the police say that he was cooperative? Did he, for example, did he refuse to take a polygraph? Anything along those lines?
No, I think he did. I don't know if he took a polygraph or not. I know that they had several interviews of him on DVD, interviews that they had done with him and the girl that had moved in, because they interviewed her too. And then later on, she was the one that turned him in to them, and then she was able to produce some of the items, the art set and the T-shirt that I had sent Amanda for Christmas. He gave those to her.
Right. Just to clarify that you sent her these presents, and the new woman ends up with them.
Yes, correct. And nobody was supposed to have those presents because she took them with her. So he was arrested at that point for tampering with evidence. And he bonded out on a $100,000 bond or something like that. His dad helped him out.
All right. So that's, you send it for your daughter, and then the other woman ends up with them.
Correct.
Okay. So, all right. We're going to come back to her, certainly. Let's just start here for the rest of this disappearance. This alleged note, as Clint said, that allegedly Amanda wrote a note. She's going to a friend. Doesn't say anything about coming back or anything. Was he ever able to produce this note?
No, he was not.
All right, so we just have his word on that.
Right, and he was every time Sergeant Vasquez said that he went to question him about anything, he was always very nervous. Mm-hmm. And the day that we went down and looked in the storage, and I told him, I said, well, what about this and that? She had this table. And he's like, okay, well, we're going to get in the car and go over there. So me and her dad got in the car with Officer Vasquez, and we drove to his house. He knocked on the door, and he's talking to Clint, and he's asking him about these items. Well, Clint lets him in, and sure enough, there's her grandmother's table sitting there. And he was just very nervous and shaky the whole time that we were there. We didn't say anything to him. Of course, I wanted to rip him a new one and say, where's my daughter? Where's my kid's stuff? So we had to show extreme control in that situation. But, like I said, 3 months after she went missing and he was in jail and actually got in there, they were still finding things that belonged to her and Casey in their house. So all of their stuff was there.
Okay. All right, so we have that. So no proof that this note ever existed. But on the other hand, we have to remember that there wasn't nothing really got done till the 19th. So we have 9 days. It's very. I'm not saying I necessarily believe this, but theoretically, he could have seen the note and just threw it out. And
Correct.
I don't know if that would be, suspicious or not. But did the note really exist? We already have talked about the Christmas gifts they got there, but they ended up with the other woman. Like I said, we're going to come back to her in a bit. And let's just go over Amanda's stuff again. It was, so if she left, it seems like she left quite a bit of her stuff behind.
Right. And so every year when I would go down at Christmas, I would bring her stuff, and I had brought her down a bunch of clothes that I had that were too small for me, and I had given her 2 leather jackets, bomber style jackets. I had given her my favorite scarf, because when she was walking back and forth to school, I bought her a black coat that was like a pea coat, and I had a big fuzzy scarf that I gave to her. There was a whole list of things that I gave the police officers to go in there and find, and they found 90% of it. Casey's rocking chair that I bought for him when he was a baby. There was quite a few things that they found and that they now have in evidence. When we went down for my son's wedding, she was wearing a pair of cowboy boots that had angel wings. Sorry.
It's all right.
And they have all that stuff. Supposedly they still have all that stuff in their evidence room.
Okay. So still finding, so if she took off, she went off with not a lot of stuff.
Correct. They never found her driver's license or her car keys or any personal, a comb or brush or, toothbrush or anything like that. So at one point, her dad, myself, and Casey submitted DNA for NAMUS. And that's in the event that anything's ever found, they can match her DNA with ours.
Okay. Now, of course, Amanda's son wasn't there, but seemingly Clint's daughter was there when she left. Which I realized unfortunately, she wasn't 8 years old. She was only 4 years old, and that's an age where it gets a little dicey whether memory is good and whether they really understand whether everything that's going on or not. Was the 4-year-old daughter questioned?
Yes, she was questioned, and she had said that he had hit Amanda in the head, and she said that Amanda was near big water with the alligators.
That's what she said.
Yes.
Okay. How much do you know how much later this conversation happened? And I'm guessing that this had to be done in the company of a social worker, a child care personnel, or something like that, right?
Yes.
All right. When was that conversation done? Do you remember?
I'm going to say it was in that 3-month time period. Okay. 3 months after she went missing is when the woman turned him in. Her father somehow was in the service and had gotten wind of what was going on and heard that, Amanda was missing. And he called the police station himself and told them that he would bring his daughter down to the police station and she would tell them everything she knew. So he showed up unannounced, and of course Clint wouldn't allow Eva to go with him because she also had another daughter too that was living there. I think she might have been around 8 years old. He wouldn't allow her to take the girls with her, but her dad came under the pretense that he was taking her out to eat.
Okay.
And
nice.
He took her down to the police office. And that is where she, gave them evidence. They questioned her about the white t-shirt and the art set and things like that. And then when she was able to tell them, yes, I have those things. They went and arrested Clint for tampering with evidence.
Tampering. All right, so we do have a child who was there 4 years old, though I don't know how reliable that would have been had we gotten to a criminal trial. But that's what she said. She said Clint hit Amanda in the head, and then eventually, if we're to believe her, that she went along and there was a lake with alligators, water with alligators.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There was a park that Clint and Amanda took the kids to on several occasions. And he was actually seen at one point coming out of that park.
Right.
And
we'll eventually get to that. That's fine. We'll eventually get to that. But at the time, that's what was said. This little girl said that. Okay. Let's move on to this. Of course, more along the line of witnesses. Neighbors hear anything, see anything. Anything suspicious during that time frame, December 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, anywhere in there?
When we went down and we walked the neighborhood with Cassie Marco, and they talked to the neighbors on both sides, or on one side of her, and it was an older man, and he said that he had seen Amanda carrying like a red purse walking down the street, and it looked like she was crying, and he hollered out to her, "Hey, are you okay?" And I had brought her down a bag that had a geisha girl on it. It was a red bag with a geisha girl on it, an Ed Hardy bag, and that was the only thing that was seen. And he was saying it was around that time that she was thought to have gone missing.
Okay. But nothing, no screaming, no shouting, no maybe car at 3 a.m, anything like that.
No, nothing was ever said about that. And then the person that lived on the other side of her was actually a police officer. So they never reported anything.
And would you say that, though, being that I've not been there, you have been there, would you say that those houses are close?
Yeah, fairly close.
Okay.
I'm not good at like measurements or anything, but
would you say closer than a football field? Football field, closer than a football field.
Close, way closer than that.
All right. That's all we need to know. That's plenty. Okay. Yeah. What about phone records? Now you did say that Clint had said, "Oh, she broke her phone." Any proof of that? Were her records checked? Any pings for her phones checked?
Yes, they did. They did do several pings on the phone and things like that, and everything just didn't seem to produce anything. Mm-hmm. There was also several different cell phones, so trying to figure out which one was hers and which wasn't. But they nothing ever came of the pings.
All right, so no pings that, for example, could have been by a lake that would have alligators, like the little girl said. Nothing, unfortunately, weren't lucky enough to get anything regarding that.
Right.
Was there any proof that the phone was actually broken? Did he ever say, "Hey, here's her phone"?
That I don't think so. No.
Okay. So would you say
because it was like they found like a little junk drawer with different cell phones in it. You know what I'm saying?
All right. So it could have been any one of those phones. Could have been.
Yeah.
All right. So that's up in the air. I'm guessing they collected them, but not sure which one of those would have been the one that was current.
Correct.
The one that she was actually using in 2015?
Yes.
Okay. Not unusual. I would say that I have maybe the last 2 or 3 phones that I've used. So maybe, that's certainly not unusual. But much like the note, if he's going to make a statement, it would be nice if there was evidence to back it up. It would have been nice. Okay. Let's talk a little more about this other woman now. Of course, you've mentioned her several times, and I think it's shocking that, just 9 days later, another woman's moving in. not using her name, but who is this woman? She is the mother of one of Clint's, this 4-year-old daughter. Do they have other kids together? What have you learned about this woman since then? Before Amanda came along, what was the story between this woman and Clint?
Okay. So apparently what happened was she stated that Clint kidnapped her daughter as a baby. And there was actually a Facebook page with his previous girlfriend that she had made because she actually took care of this little girl. And so I lost my train of thought. So basically her story was that she was moving back in with Clint to try to get her daughter out of there. They had a rocky relationship. And he took the little girl from her.
All right, so they were in a relationship. They have this daughter, and not long after she is born, Clint takes off with this daughter.
Correct.
All right, and then of course eventually Amanda comes along, and she and Clint start a relationship.
Correct.
Okay, and then sometime, once again in December of 2015, this woman ends up moving back in with Clint and their daughter.
Correct. And then she brings her other daughter along.
Okay. So I have to ask you some questions as best as you can tell. Do you did a conversation ever come up between you and Amanda about this other woman? Oh, Clint has this other woman, and of course you know he has a kid, but did Amanda know that Clint and this other woman were ever in contact with each other? What can you say?
Yes. So during that time, I know that at one time they had driven to Oklahoma because that's where the other woman was, because they were supposedly in a custody battle of something like that over the little girl. So she had actually driven with him at one point to Oklahoma to go. He went to go see this girl. She stayed in the motel room.
Okay.
To discuss custody of the little girl and things like that. Supposedly, I think a couple of times he went back and forth over things like that.
Okay. I guess then we can also say is this other woman was aware of Amanda.
No, she claims that she never knew anything about Amanda.
Do you believe that?
I think it's shady.
Okay. All right. I don't. You of course you know all these people. I don't. So yeah. That's why I have to rely on you for your own impressions of all of this. It's clear that Amanda knew about this woman, but you don't think this other woman knew about Amanda.
Correct. That's what she said all along.
Okay. And so when she's moving in there on, let's say, roughly December 19th of 2015, do you think that she was aware that there was another woman who had just lived in there roughly a week before that who was now missing? Do you think she was aware of that?
I feel like she would have had to have figured it out because there was another woman's clothing there and things like that. Okay. I would have thought that would have been suspicious, but not realizing in hindsight that my daughter kind of went through the same thing, because when she moved in there, she was contacted by one of Clint's previous girlfriends, stating that he had a wedding ring set that belonged to her father, and Amanda thought she was just trying to cause trouble with her and Clint, but what she was trying to tell her was, he's got my dad's wedding rings and he won't give them back to me, and they don't belong to him.
All right.
And so there was also like a wedding dress there that she sold and different things like that. So there was things from that woman in the house when Amanda moved in.
Wow. Okay. So it's just a revolving door of women going through this place.
Correct.
All right. Do you have any idea how this other woman ended up moving out, or did you get to kick her out? Do you know anything about that?
So based on some of the information that the police gave me, she him and her split up. She was in fear of her life. He had held a gun to her head. Like, she was very worried to even go in and talk to the police about some of the things. They had some animals together, and there was a big fight over the animals. And she was just scared to death of him and didn't want to be around him.
How long before Amanda came in his life did this all happen? Once again, I know these are very technical questions. They don't even involve your daughter, but what do you know about when this other woman left before Amanda moved in?
I can't give you any dates or how soon that was.
That's fine. All right, so Amanda goes missing around December 10th of 2015. 9 days later, this other woman's moving in, and we're not even clear. She had to have known, like you said, because there was other woman's, your daughter's stuff there. When did she admit that she finally knew that Amanda had been there? Not maybe when that cop showed up, I guess, right? And starts asking questions.
Yeah, I'm going to say it was probably 3 months after the fact, after Amanda had gone missing, when she finally did go down to the police station on her own to talk to them with her dad.
So I guess what we're saying here is Clint could have been keeping her in the dark somewhat.
Right. And she later stated that every time that she would question him about Amanda or anything like that, he would just lie to her.
Mm-hmm. And it should be known you have talked to this woman several times since 2015, yes. Right?
Yes, she contacted me the day after he died.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so giving that away, Clint is no longer with us, and we'll get into that eventually as well. All right. So, and what eventually happened between Clint and this woman? Of course, she didn't go missing. She's still around here in 2026. How long was she there before, of course, like you said, they share a daughter together. She might have moved in just to get custody of her. What went on in 2016 between them?
I mean,
did she eventually move out? I mean, did she get the daughter and get the heck out, or what?
Yes. After she went down to the police station and talked to them about the situation with Amanda with her dad, they arrested Clint for tampering with evidence, and then she got her daughter and stuff and left. And of course, they told her, you keep in contact with us because she was also a suspect.
Right.
And so, but yeah, she got her daughter and got out of there.
Okay, but she has told you, you've talked to her many times, you still believe to this day that you're really not sure if she knew Amanda was in there or not.
I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I have to ask you this. If she's ever told you, did Clint ever tell her what he thought happened to Amanda? Did he ever come up with his own opinion as to what happened? Has she ever done that?
She's never shared that with me. We've discussed, the things that her little girl has said, but she's never said anything to me about what Clint says happened, other than the fact that every time she would ask questions, he would lie to her about stuff. So beyond that, I don't know.
Does her daughter, 4 years old at the time, she was the little girl that talked about the water and the alligators, she would now be 14. Does she still stick to that story? Does she, as a 14-year-old, still remember that? Or does she now think, well, I don't know if my 4-year-old self was right about that? Do you know?
Well, the woman reached out to me not too long ago, probably about a month or so ago, still stating the same things and basically telling me, I don't think you're ever going to find your daughter, because I think he did do what she said. I think he put her in a swamp where the alligators were, and you're never going to find her. And I said, well, I'm never going to stop looking.
Okay.
So, but she did say that she doesn't think her daughter remembers now. That's probably not a subject that they continued to bring. I would hope they, didn't continue to
Yeah, she
bring
probably
that
is
up.
right. You know, it's once again, like I said, we have experience in this area on Unfound when it comes to children being witness to things or alleged witness to things. And you get down to about 4 years old, and it gets a little dicey. If just
Right.
yeah, of course, I've never been a parent, but I can even say from my own life, my own memories going back to the 1970s. You know, I can kind of remember like 1976, the bicentennial year, kinda, and all the festivities and everything. But you get anything before that in my mind, it's just does not register. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I can remember things that I did when I was 3 years old
All
with my
right.
grandma.
All right, we got that superior mind over there, Angela. That's what it is. Congratulations on that.
And then, of course, my grandma would have to tell everything about it
Yes.
every year, too. So you could not forget.
Okay. All right, so let's now talk about Clint exclusively. Of course, we know he has this shady story about the note. It seems he has a revolving door of women going through wherever he lives, and these women are afraid of him, and we know that Amanda was looking to leave him. But we should note that the woman before Amanda didn't go missing, the woman after Amanda didn't go missing, only Amanda is missing. We know that he went to jail for criminal tampering. How long did he stay in? Was he in jail for that, or did he plead not guilty? What went on with that?
The only thing I know is the police said that he bonded out for that, so I don't think he stayed in jail very long. I think that his dad helped him get out with that.
Okay. All right, and so he helped get out, but, I mean, did he ever plead guilty, or what happened?
I don't think that, I don't know that he ever went to court over that because of the procession of how things happened. I don't know that he ever got to court for that.
Okay. All right. Let's now. What happened 3 months after with Clint? What happened with Clint 3 months after Amanda went missing?
Yeah. So I know that at that point the woman that was living there turned him in. And then they kind of went back and forth. Like I could see her Facebook and his Facebook, and like he was apologizing to her on Facebook about wanting to be with the girls and missing her and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I did see that transpire. And then he killed a homeless man in Houston and stated that the homeless man was the one who had murdered Amanda.
All right. What do you? Of course, you were not there. What have you been told about this killing of this homeless man?
Okay. So I was contacted by police, and they said that Clint in Harris County, and they said that Clint turned himself in for that. That it was a very brutal killing. He slit him from one side of the neck to the other.
Oh, my goodness.
And supposedly they were in a bar drinking together, and the homeless man said something to him about, hey, you're the one that girl's missing from, and he just supposedly went off on him and killed him out in the parking lot. It didn't make a lot of sense. But the area where that happened was on the other side of Houston, not somewhere that my daughter would have been, that
Right.
she would have been in that area,
Right. How would? Yeah. I mean, how many people would? I mean,
She
maybe
would-
they know. Maybe they know about Amanda's disappearance, but would they know that he's a guy who could be a suspect who was dating her? It seems unlikely.
It doesn't, right, because first off, Amanda's case did not get very much publicity.
Mm-hmm.
It was only posted one time. It was only put up one time on the news in the Houston area that I know of.
Yeah.
So for somebody to remember something like that so randomly that didn't know you from Adam, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
All right. So what we're saying is, there's no doubt that Clint killed this guy, but the reason may have nothing to do with the disappearance. He may have just killed him just for the heck of it.
Yes.
All right, and what came of that? Did he plead guilty? Was there a trial? What happened?
So I know that I think that he was in jail at least 3 times. He was supposed to be put in Harris County, and somehow he got transferred to Polk County, which is the county that Onalaska is in. So Harris County is Houston. So like he was transferred to Polk County somehow. But in between that, he got out of that again because he turned himself in. So he got out of jail again. But then they came and arrested him and took him to Polk County or something like that.
So did he go? I guess did he go to jail? Did he serve time for this? Was there going to be a trial? Did he plead guilty? Yes. Did they plead him out? What happened? Do you know? So
as far as I know, he was in jail in Polk County. He was there for several months. Before he had been diagnosed previously with a rare form of MS, and while he was in Polk County jail, they said that he was continually going downhill physically. They couldn't continue to keep taking him back and forth to the hospital or doctor, and then so he was released again. And all I know is that the day that he died, he was in the VA hospital, and Texas Marshals showed up, or the U.S. Marshals showed up to take him to jail, and they, from what I understood, were pretty harsh, and they didn't care if you were on your deathbed, but they couldn't take him because he was in such bad shape. Okay. But they showed up to the VA to pick him up and put him in jail, and this was all for the homeless man's murder.
Okay, so really what we're saying is he died before he had to serve out a sentence or go to trial, something along those lines. He never really paid the price here, at least in the material world, for the murder of this homeless guy, is what you're saying. Okay.
Right.
All right, so, but we do know, there's no doubt that for some reason he just slit this guy's throat, didn't shoot him, didn't punch him, and the guy fell over, hit his head. He just had a knife, slit his throat. That was that, and there were witnesses.
I don't know about the witnesses.
Okay.
I don't know that there were witnesses. I don't remember the police officer that I talked to saying anything about that.
Okay.
Other than the fact that he turned himself in.
Okay. Now, but that's not the only. Of course, I know what a lot of people are going to be thinking regarding Amanda's disappearance. But besides the homeless person, that's not the only person that Clint killed, is it? And this wasn't discovered until years later. Why don't you tell the listeners about that?
Okay. Yeah, so, well, it wasn't years later. It was, the police discovered, this was all, after the fact, and Amanda had gone missing. Mm-hmm. They found out that he was responsible for a murder of someone in Oklahoma. They went to Oklahoma to talk to the police department and wherever it happened. And the one thing that I found out through this whole thing is police departments don't help other police departments. They would not give them release any information to him about that suspected murder. They wouldn't release any information to the police in Onalaska about the murder in Oklahoma. So they, made a wasted trip going there because they got nowhere with that.
So how did this even come up, through DNA or something, or how did that even come up? Because once again, this was an unsolved murder. Amanda goes missing. He kills the homeless person, and then I guess Clint dies, And then, only then is it discovered that he's responsible for this unsolved murder in Oklahoma. Is that how it all went down?
Well, no, because they found out about the murder in Oklahoma before he died. Like, they knew about that pretty close into the investigation, as they were, like, investigating things about him, like, trying to find out history, because he had also been accused of stealing money from the VFW hall that was there in either Cleveland or someplace that was close to Onalaska. Like, he had been involved in some shady things like that. So these are just things that I found out after the fact. They actually drove to Arkansas to get DNA from me right away after Amanda went missing, and we figured out, that she was missing. So they did go, they did drive to Oklahoma to try to find out information, and just were not given any information whatsoever. And then one of the times that they did go out and were doing searching for Amanda, they had helped another police department that was also looking for a missing person. And, it just floored me, because I was told, we're not going to spend our time looking for their person. We need to do this or that. And I'm like thinking to myself, just find somebody's missing family member. Like, I want everyone to be found, but it's like, I was just floored at the fact that one police department went and do something to help another one. Yeah. That was in that type of situation.
Do we know what the situation was with this other murder? Why it happened?
I don't have any real information on that.
Okay. But there's no doubt he at least killed 2 people. At least. Probably 3. And I guess if there's 3, we might even be open to the idea that he killed more.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put
anything past him.
Okay.
Because of the lies that he was caught in during the time of my daughter's disappearance and things like that. I wouldn't put anything past him.
Okay. And, of course, we already know now he died in 2016 from MS, from complications from MS.
Yes.
Oh, my. Okay. No deathbed confession, nothing like that for Amanda.
Nothing that I was ever told of, no.
Okay. Now, I know, as you've already stated just within the last few minutes, there's some complaints that you have about with the police, and I'll just hit upon one of them, and it had something to do with, of course, a group that has been mentioned many times before on this podcast, and that is Texas EquuSearch. You don't have any problem with them, but you were told that they were coming to do something they didn't, and the police lied to you. Why don't we talk about that?
Yeah, so I was actually contacted by the police chief at that time, because there's a group called Texas EquuSearch, and they're horseback riders who go out and search for cadavers and bodies, things like that. They're very well known around that area. And I was contacted by the police chief at that time, and he said, hey, I wanted just to let you know that Texas EquuSearch is coming out today, and they're going to do some searching, but we don't want you to say anything, to keep that on the down low. They don't want anyone to know they're here. So they went out, they did a search, to no avail, nothing was found. But later, I called Texas EquuSearch myself and found out that they never heard about my daughter's case, didn't know who she was. Talked to one of the ladies that worked there who knew the owner personally, and they just told me, we've never heard of your daughter's case.
Did the police ever offer any explanation for that when you spoke to them? Hey, you said you were getting Texas EquuSearch involved. They said they never were requested to do anything. Any explanation from them?
No, I had no explanation about them because I was never able to confront them about that because I didn't find that out until later. They would tell me that they were going to do searches quite frequently in the beginning, and every time you turn around, something would happen. On one search in particular, they had gone out and they were searching a swampy area, and they found a emaciated alligator. So that stopped the search then because they had to do something with that. Where it was where she lived is kind of considered like East Texas, so there's a lot of snakes and things like that. So searching during the summertime and things like that was not a good idea because there were snakes and things like that. So they would try to go out in January when it was colder and people weren't susceptible to getting snake bit and things like that. So there was a time they went out to do that, and then they stopped the search because someone almost got bit by a snake. It's like there was always something that would happen to where they couldn't complete or spend more time out there searching the area. And that was the area that was near the park where they had taken the kids.
Right, let's talk about, you did mention that earlier. Let's go back to that. That somebody, actually a police officer, saw Clint coming out of some woods. When was this? Where was this?
So this was so this park that they searched, and I'd given you the name of the park. I can't remember what it is. This was like 6 months after Amanda went missing. He comes forward and says, "Oh yeah, I saw that dude coming out of the woods." And so I was like, well, why didn't he report that, back in the beginning or way in the beginning? And I don't know what the situation was with that, but he was wearing an army jacket and all that kind of stuff, coming out of the woods.
And that area was eventually searched?
Yeah, so there was a children's park there and a pavilion, and then behind the park is a big it butts up to the park. It's like a hunting area where people could go hunt. A lot of law enforcement used that area to go hunting. So it was also very hard for them to get out there to search because it was private property and they had to have special permission from the people who owned it. And every time they would go out there to search, they'd get told, well, you can't be here. This is private property. So a couple of years ago, they had a different woman police chief because they've changed police chiefs 4 times in the past 10 years. And she was able to go out there and do a search. She knew some of the people. She knew the people that owned the property, so she was able to get out there and they were able to search. Of course, nothing was found, but they did make an effort to go do that again.
All right, all right. And so we have no explanation why Clint would have ever been in those woods. I suppose it could be something suspicious, but maybe not.
Right.
All right. And did you tell me something about a burned baseball glove or something?
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Yes. So, and some of the searches, when they'd searched the property where they were living, they did tell me one time that they had found they had a burned pile and they had found some burned jewelry. And then they had found, when they were out searching this area behind the park, they found my grandson's baseball glove that was partially burnt in a bag. So they had that too. So I had actually gone out there one time with them on a search, and they found an eyeglass case. My daughter wore glasses, but I don't know that was her case. But there was a lot of things, a lot of debris out there. She vaped.
Okay.
They found vape stuff out there, things like that.
So it looks like somebody dumped some of her stuff out there.
Yeah.
Okay. And that area, though, has been thoroughly searched. Of course, Amanda is still missing.
No, I don't think it's been thoroughly searched. There's too much. There's too many woods and things there to have. They never searched the whole thing. I was told that.
Okay. I ask this question just about every interview I do. Angela, how tough has this all been?
Well, it's been hard because, my main concern is my grandson. He's now 18 years old, and he's got a lot of big feelings about this, but the hardest part is that, and he just said this to my son the other day, that he doesn't have a place to go, sit with his mom and talk about how he feels. He's been to counseling and things like that, but, he was 8 years old when she went missing, and, he's just a little boy, and trying to get him to understand that, your mom wouldn't have just abandoned you. She loved you. She wanted to talk to you every day, that kind of thing. It's been hard for him, and him being an 8-year-old boy, like, he didn't want to talk to his family members about what was going on with his mom. And, so, he's carried a lot of that grief, and none of us have had the closure that we would want to have. He doesn't have a graveyard to go to and say, this is where my mom is, so it's hard. It's hard. That first year was hard. We just want her to be found and have a proper place to be buried.
Right. And so he ended up being raised by his father?
Yes.
Okay. And you get to, of course, you don't, I guess, live near Texas anymore, so you don't get to see him that much, or do you?
Yeah, I don't get to see him that much, but he did just graduate from high school, and he's always worked since he was 14 years old. He's had a job doing something, I'm just very proud of him. He loves football, and his mom would have been really proud of him, and he's a good kid.
Okay. Maybe I'll ask you this. Of course, we can't forget that Amanda was sick not long before she went missing. And we know that her son, your grandson, was there. And you had the story about, Clint tried to give me the sandwich and everything else. Does your grandson have any insight into this sickness that Amanda had?
Other than I know that he was there that weekend, and like she couldn't get up and do anything with him because she was sick the whole weekend, and that's what he said after that.
Okay.
So he'd gone to go spend the weekend with his mom, and they really didn't get to do anything together because she was sick the whole time he was there.
Right. Okay. Would you say that Amanda prone to getting sick? For example, in 2015, I realize it's over 10 years ago now. Do you think she was sick at any other time that year?
Well, not that I know of. Nothing other than, like a common cold, and like I said, she did have a miscarriage.
Right. Okay. All right, something to think about there, I think. What are the odds that she goes missing right after she says that she is sick? And it doesn't sound to me like people can get sick at any time. Who knows? I'm not one to get sick, but you run into somebody with a virus, and I guess you can get it. But it is something I think that needs to be pondered at least a little bit. Okay.
Right. Right. And the thing is, like, Casey was never sick, or sorry, my grandson was never sick after that. I mean, he didn't come down with the virus during that time, or, if you're going to expose someone to what you have.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Do you have a Facebook page, website, anything like that set up for Amanda's disappearance? If so, tell the listeners about it right now, Angela.
Yes, it's called We Miss Amanda, and one of the ladies that first helped me get things going for that, his name was Cassie Marco, and like I said, she's the founder of Missing Hearts, and so there's it's called We Miss Amanda. I was gonna look it up so I could give you the specifics.
Go ahead.
Let's see here. Yeah, it's called We Miss Amanda, Facebook.com or Facebook.com/We Miss Amanda.
Okay. And are you one of the administrators there? So if anybody sends any messages, you'll get to see them, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and so throughout the 10 years that she's been missing, there has been several people that have worked with me, and we've added things, to that page or to that Facebook group.
Okay. All right, say it one more time. We Miss Amanda is what it's called.
Yes, hang on one second. I'm trying to get on that. Trying to make sure I say it right. Okay, yes.
Okay,
it's called,
please.
Sorry. It's like I'm having the hardest time. I'm just trying to pull up the page. Yes, it's called We Miss Amanda, and that's on Facebook.
Okay. Angela, any final words before we complete this interview?
No, I just appreciate that you've done this, and I hope that it helps shed some light to her case, because it's been a cold case for many years. And like I said, she didn't have very much publicity, because, I would tell the police, well, I'd like to talk to the, people in the news and things like that in that area, and I would be told, oh, we'll take care of that, and then nothing ever happened. So, like I said, her missing persons photo was only shown in the Houston area one time that I know of.
Okay. Now that I'm thinking about it, I do want to ask you one more thing about this other woman who eventually moved in. Being that you have been in contact with her, can she tell you how it all came about? Was it something that just one day he suddenly called her up and said, hey, you know what, why don't you come back and move in with me? Or was it something that, the way she remembers it, that it was something that was a little more planned? I mean, how did it all come about that she ended up?
Well, the way she's describing it is, it seemed to me like it was a little more planned, because he had started talking to her during the summertime, which was like July. And in that time, he was also in the hospital. That's when he was being diagnosed with having MS. Right. And I just remember Amanda saying that he didn't really want her to go down there to the hospital with him, but she went anyway. She wanted to go. And it's like, and I'm just thinking, well, it's the reason why he didn't want you to go is because he knew she was coming around, because apparently that's when their relationship started, was back in July. So...
All right, so this wasn't something where just sometime after December 10th, he just called her up and said, you know what, I realize we have our daughter. How about you come down and maybe we can work things out? No, this is something that they might have been talking about since the previous summer.
Right. And I feel like, Amanda wasn't supposed to be there. She was supposed to be in Wyoming for 6 months, and she wound up, because things didn't work out the way she had planned there, she wound up coming back home early, because that was another whole discussion we had about, and I was like, well, what about all your things? You know, what if, because I said to her the very thing, what if he moves some other woman in there? You know, what's going to happen to all yours and Casey's things and all that kind of stuff? And again, it was like, oh, Mom, that's not ever going to happen, you know, that kind of thing. And so, yeah.
Okay.
But also on Amanda's We Miss Amanda page, she also has a NAMUS number.
Okay.
And if you want that, it's 33846.
Okay. 33846.
Yes.
Okay. Angela, thank you for being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
And that was my January 7th, 2026 interview with Angela, mother of Amanda Thacker. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. What makes the analysis of Amanda's disappearance, and I say this very sadly, but as you all know, I'm always very frank about assessments of cases. What makes this analysis straightforward is knowing that undoubtedly Clint killed two people. Granted, both were men, but I don't think that matters. What I mean by this is we have so many of these the man said type, where the men seemingly did not commit any major crimes before their women's disappearances or after their women's disappearances. This kind of leaves the chance, if only subconsciously, that these men really didn't do what we think they did. Knowing Clint's history, this overwhelmingly, way more than any other disappearance of this type, makes us think that he unfortunately harmed Amanda. We don't even need to know about the note that was never produced. We don't need to know about the other baby's mama. We don't need to know about Amanda's stuff being in the possession of that baby's mama. Once again, unfortunately. Knowing what Clint did before and after Amanda's disappearance is enough. But this still leaves a big question. Why didn't the other women disappear as well? And that's the program. I'm Ed Dunsel, and you've been listening to Unfound.